Hello, you are listening to the Child Care Director's Chair podcast. Your host, Erica Saccoccio, invites you to join her community of passionate and inspiring leaders in the ECE field, where she discusses, reflects, and shares the best ways to invest in our children, families, teachers, and community. Because after all, we know they are the heartbeat of any successful program.
Hey guys, Erica Saccoccio here with the Child Care Director's Chair podcast, where we love to talk about all things ECE. We like to discuss, reflect, and learn the best ways to invest in your team, your parents, your children, and your communities. So come on in, join our community. We're so happy you hit that play button. Today we are joined with a special guest, Susie. I'm going to say it wrong anyway. She just told me, Susie Beghin. That close?
That's correct.
Perfect. She is an author. She's a fellow podcaster. She has the ECE Classroom podcast. If you haven't checked it out, definitely check it out. I was a guest and we will share that episode with you in the next couple of weeks. She also is a childcare owner, so she knows her stuff. She walks the walk, talks the talk. And today we are going to talk about the power of play. She absolutely loves talking about play. She is a play-based program, just like I am. And so we wanted to share our love of play with all of you today. So welcome to the show, Susie.
Thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here.
So tell folks, where are you from?
I live in the Greater Toronto area, which we call GTA, which is in Canada, Ontario. And that's where I'm from. And that's where my centers are. That's where I'm based.
Okay. What brought you to the field of early childhood education?
Wow, that is a long story. We could do a whole podcast
Make
on
it
that.
short. I gave us a little extra time because we knew each other. I said, let me give us a little extra time today. So go ahead. Tell folks how'd you end up here?
Well, my son was born about 21 years ago. And at that point, I decided to change careers because I really decided at that point that I really loved to work with children. I knew I was always good with children, but I didn't know that I wanted to make it a career until he was born. And then it just solidified for me that I knew I had to pursue that passion. So I went back to school, got my ECE, and then opened up a daycare.
Same here. That's how I found my way. I
Amazing
had my
what
daughter.
kids will do.
I used to sell furniture. So strange. And I had my daughter, and it led me here. And 25 years later, I own a few centers. But it is interesting that your mind shift that happens when you have a child.
Yes, your whole world changes.
So, what made you decide to be a play-based program? Like, what was it? Because, there's so many different philosophies and theories.
Yes.
And what was it for you?
It just resonated with the way I think children learn. And, when I went back to get my ECE, I was a mature student. I was, not young. I was in my 30s. And at that point, I realized a lot about how children learn. I did a lot of child development research, and I really understood that children learn best through play. And that really what led me to the play-based curriculum.
Yeah. I also think not only do children learn best through play, because as you said, that is what research shows. That's not just our opinion. I also think teachers love to teach through play. It makes it not only more engaging for the children, but also the teachers who are planning the activities and are being intentional about what it is that we want children to gain from the experiences that we put out for our children. So I think for me, I couldn't imagine working in a ditto school. That would not be for me. So can you explain why play is critical for children's overall development and maybe specific skills and abilities that it helps foster?
Yeah. So I think you just mentioned it. All the child development research points to the fact that children learn best through play. And every curriculum out there probably incorporates some element of play because children can't learn any other way. They're not like adults. They have a different way of learning. They have a different structure to how their brain operates. And so that's why I think play is so critical in the early years, because if children learn best through play, then the only way to teach them is to play with them, to engage in play, whether that play can take on so many different things. It doesn't have to be something specific. Play can be, making lunch together. That can be play. So sometimes we have to expand our definition of what play is, because anything can be playful, really, when you think
Hmm.
about it. Anything that we do, we can make it playful. And children learn when they're enjoying themselves, when they are having fun, let's say. And that I think goes for any age. At any age, we're always learning better when we're enjoying what we're doing. But even more so for children who are, under the age of 6 years old. That is basically the one and only way that they will learn.
Yeah. And most of the folks that listen to our podcast are either childcare directors or childcare owners or early learning center owners. And so, why are we talking about play on a show that's primarily based towards folks who are typically in the office? What do you think I selected to talk about this? What do you think?
Why do I
Yeah.
think?
Yeah. What do you think,
Because
Susie?
I really believe that everybody needs to get on board with this. Everybody needs to understand how important play is. A lot of times we diminish it. We think that play is just something that you do after you get all your work done, and we diminish the value of play. So I think it's important for childcare center owners, directors, supervisors, educators, parents, anybody who's interacting with children to understand how important play is to their development. I've been doing a lot of research because, as you mentioned, I wrote a book called Learn to Play, which is all about play. And I did a lot of research in writing the book. And when I went to the websites like United Nations, just anywhere where they talk about the values and rights of children, the number one thing that they mention is that play is critical to children's development. And so play is, and that's just another way of saying play is how children learn. And so everybody needs to be on board with that. And we really need to, I think, help everyone understand the value of play and how important it is so that our children can thrive.
Yeah. So in my mind, Susie, I'm thinking of three things off the top of my head. First is as a leader of your business, you need to lead by example. So that means you also should be in the classrooms, playing with the children, engaging with the children, being part of the culture of what's going on in your school. That would be number one right off the top of my head. Number two, the reason I wanted to talk about play is we sometimes have to educate parents, right? We do the tours. We do the majority of that work of educating what it is we do in our programs and why we do it that way. So sometimes we have to educate families on why we have chosen to become a play-based program and the benefits for their children. Our state, we in Rhode Island, we are have the Rhode Island Early Learning Standards, which are all interwoven into how we teach children to play. And then lastly, I would say, and we could probably make a list of 10, but lastly is you set the vision and mission of your business. I know I set mine, you created yours, right? So if
Yeah.
you are a play-based program, how are you making sure that if that's your vision, how are you bringing that to life? And so I really wanted to reflect because that's one of the things we do on our show. I like to go back and reflect and say, the work that I'm doing is important. And sometimes we need to look back and say, what are we doing and reconnecting with our why, not to sound corny, but reconnecting with our why. And so that's why I thought it was such an important topic to talk about on our show. Like we do so many different things as childcare owners, right? It's not just balancing budgets and worrying about enrollment and curb appeal and all the things that you hear on so many other podcasts or coaches talking about, but what are we doing here? And it is educating children in the how and the why. And so a lot of times that goes back to what's the leadership, what's the vision, how are we emulating that? And so that's why I thought it was such an important topic to have on our show. um,
Yes.
yeah. Could you share some examples of how play-based programs enhance creativity and problem-solving skills for children?
Sure. Well, when children are playing, they're basically encountering problems throughout their play. So, something balances on top of something else. I'm, balancing some blocks, let's say. Let's make it simple. Um, One falls off. So I'm learning about balance. I'm learning about cause and effect. So many things I'm learning and problem solving. Like maybe if I put this block in a certain way and I position it in a certain way, then it won't fall. Maybe it'll stay, stationary. So, and I can build a taller tower or a shorter tower. And so these problems that I'm encountering, I'm having to find solutions. And so that's the process of building problem solving skills. And that's how play builds problem solving skills. And it happens in everyday play situations that children are part of. Like I said, even though it doesn't look like play, whatever it is they're doing, they're engaging in some aspect of play. And because of the way they do it, it's enjoyable to them. Children don't usually do things that are not enjoyable. They shy away from those things. So the things that they do sometimes have some kind of a playful aspect to it, and they're, like I said, encountering problems, doing problem solving. As far as creativity goes, you know, um, it's the same thing. When I have to figure out how to solve a problem, usually I have to tap into my creative juices. I need to figure out, well, how can I do this differently? Or how can I do this in a better way? And I need creativity to do that. So creativity for me and problem solving go hand in hand, and they're both a big part of the play process and how children construct that learning through the play.
Yeah. So people might laugh, so I'm going to share a little bit of my life here for a minute. But it's not a big secret that I'm not a big lover of paperwork and office work. And so sometimes when I get stuck on a task that I find mundane, you might find me going to color with the kids. You could find me out, especially if I feel like I've been in the office for, a few hours and I feel like I need to stretch my legs. You could find me out in the play yard, catching some rays, enjoying the clouds and the birds chirping. So I feel like, it is a way to lift a mood, but also a way to kind of break through any challenges, even as an adult for me, or singing, right? Singing is super, super fun when you think about creativity. And maybe if it's raining and you just all of a sudden have like a spontaneous dance party in the middle of the classroom and everybody laughs and everybody has a good time. And I think it's when you are able to do things like that as a leader, it really makes the whole place have a different vibe, a different feeling of like this is a great place to be. And a play for me is, I think, just it affects the whole environment. And so when the teachers are happy and the leadership is happy and the parents are happy and the kids are happy, like who wouldn't want to go back, right? So I think that play for everyone in the building is important. And definitely, I know
And
as an adult, it helps me through some of those challenging days.
And what you just mentioned is true joy. Like that's bringing joy into the workplace and joy into your life, and just being playful, like you said, incorporating play into many different ways, whether you're doing paperwork or, incorporating some kind of, singing, dancing routine into your regular day just to boost spirits. That's creating joy
Yeah.
for everyone,
And
yourself included. And that's kind of what life is all about, right?
yeah,
Finding those
absolutely.
joyful moments.
Yeah. So how can we help parents strike that balance between structured activities and unstructured playtime for their children? Like how can we support them with resources or ideas or tips, or talk a little bit about that?
Well, I'm a big believer in both structured and unstructured play.
Mhm.
I think that you need to strike that balance, like you said. I don't think it should be all unstructured. I don't think should be all structured. And sometimes I think parents tend to lean more towards structured. For
Mhm.
example, signing up their child for some kind of, soccer or baseball. That's kind of like what we call structured play because there's rules.
Mhm.
So structured play has rules around it. It's not flexible, and I can't just make things up as I go. I have to follow along with something in particular. Whether it's swimming lessons or some kind of a sport, those generally tend to be structured play scenarios. And that's what parents gravitate to because, it's easy, right? You sign them up for something and then, they kind of take care of it. I think where the difficulty is for parents is the unstructured play, like just sitting down with children and engaging with materials. So let's take out some Play-Doh and let's see what we can do with it. Let's bring out some art materials. Let's just put some blocks on the table with some animals and maybe some rocks, and let's see what happens. Right? So it's just being open to the opportunities of using materials in different ways, and and letting the child take the lead. And that's the key to unstructured play, is letting the child take the lead. So just giving materials, providing materials, and then seeing what the children do, and then following along with them and allowing them to um, create the experience that you are co-learning alongside them. A lot of times I say that, as parents, even as educators, we're learning along with children. So as they are encountering problems and we're encountering problems with them in the play scenario, we're learning how to solve those problems with them. Maybe offering solutions, maybe sitting back, waiting to see what children will say. It's a great, and it's so fun. It's just have fun with it. Just tap into that inner child within you. Remember what it was like to be a child and play, and then just play along and be a playmate for your child. And that's how you can have a really good unstructured play session with your child.
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice. So, what role does imagination play have in developing a child's cognitive abilities and emotional intelligence?
Wow. Children are naturally curious. They're naturally have that ability to just take themselves into another world. It depends on the age of the child, of course, but once they start engaging in pretend play, then their imagination soars, right? Like, a piece of Play-Doh can become a spaceship. All of a sudden, we're traveling to Mars, and there's life on Mars. All kinds of scenarios can happen in a play situation, and their imagination just allows the learning um, to go to a new level. So, because their imagination, all of a sudden, like I said, let's use the example of the Play-Doh with the spaceship. All of a sudden, now I can start talking about space. I can talk about, well, is there air in space? What does it look like? What does space look like? And as I'm engaging in play with children, I always say one of the most important things you're going to do is engage in meaningful conversation with them. So, they might start to go in one direction and I follow along, but I provide um, extensions to the play to make it meaningful, to make it purposeful, to give it intent, and to really extend the learning beyond what they already know, right? So I can give them information about things that they might not know or might not know to ask, right? Because they don't have, you only know what you know, right? And so if they
Yeah.
don't know what the questions are, they can definitely, you as parent or educator, I like to look at them as the same thing.
The same, yeah.
Parent is an educator as well.
The
So
very
either
first.
parent or educator when engaging with
Yeah.
kids
Child's
can
first
extend the
teacher and
learning that
last.
way. Yeah.
Yeah. I think too, speaking to a lot of the things that you brought up, it makes me think about why loose part play is important, and is kind of a lot of the topic of conversation, along with obviously STEM as well. But having these open-ended type of things. And here's a tip. Save yourself all the money on the fancy toys. Like literally, like you said, throw out some boxes, some Play-Doh, some tape, if depending on the age of your child, some scissors, or leave some pre-cut pieces that children can kind of figure out what they want to make with it. But yeah, I think the more imagination play that a child has, the more they're able to expand on ideas, right? They're not constantly looking to you for the answers or approval on what they're making or what they're doing. There, it's quite the opposite. It's like, this is what I made, and they're telling you, and they're excited about it. So yeah, I think that too. And the other thing I would say is, in the last 4 years, children have really had a hard time with cognitive development and social and emotional development since the pandemics. I would say all those are areas that have always been important to really make sure that our children have access to. I think more now, because children really
Absolutely.
are struggling, right? So, are there certain types of play that might be more beneficial for different stages of child development, do you think?
Well, you mentioned loose parts,
Mm-hmm.
and I definitely, we just started implementing loose parts in our centers a couple of years ago. And it's been a little bit of a process to try and get it going because, if you've ever tried to do loose parts, it's hard to start.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to get everybody into that mindset of, they tend to want to, especially, I would have to say parents and educators both tend to like toys that are have a specific purpose, let's say, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like a puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
You put the pieces inside the puzzle. Whereas loose parts really, like you said, allow for a lot of imagination.
Mm-hmm.
And so at any age. We use loose parts from our toddler program all the way up to kindergarten. And it works well at every age and stage of development because, as you said, children are use their imaginations. So, a water bottle becomes a truck, you know? There's so many different things that representations that they can do with the materials. So when we're using sticks and rocks and different kinds of loose parts, can become anything. It's not specifically something. And so that's what's beautiful about loose parts and why it's so important to use them to have that ability to allow children to use their imaginations, to use their creativity, to use their problem solving skills. It really does improve the program.
Yeah. I think the other thing is beyond the creative part of it, you may have so many different domains, like you had mentioned, like rocks and sticks, right? So even just being observant of different types of materials, different naturally made materials. So there are so many things. That's why loose pots are so great. Is it isn't even what the children make with the materials. It can also be just them exploring the actual material. Might not make anything. I might just look at the different attributes, the different sizes, the different textures, right? So it's not like you're going to be like, hey, check out the texture of this, right? You may notice the child is checking out the texture of the rock. And so you may pick up another rock and say, how are these the same? How are these different? What are the colors? Tell me more about your rock. What looks different than my rock, right? So it is so open ended, and you really aren't sure what domain you'll end up with because it's really going to be contingent on the child and what they decide they're going to do with those materials. So it's even beyond that, the creativity. Can caregivers or educators create environments that encourage more meaningful play and experiences for children? And if so, how?
I think keeping an open mind as a caregiver is important and not having a specific outcome. As you said just now, you know, I might think that, we're going to do something specific today with whatever materials I've provided. Need to keep an open mind to be able to understand that children might want to go in a different direction with that. Maybe we were going to, I had an idea in my head to line up the rocks a certain way. Whereas children, maybe, like you said, just wanted to explore the properties of the rocks and not line them up or not count them or not, make them into letters, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just keeping that open mind to really observe children, see what they want to do with things, and then follow along. Really be a good playmate. A really good
Yeah.
playmate will follow along and not try to direct the play. That's
Okay.
important, I think, is keeping that direction as teachers, as parents, as adults. We tend to want to direct. We tend to want to say, this is how we should do this. And
Yeah.
we really have to take the back seat and resist the temptation to direct and just follow. And that's how
Yeah.
we'll be good play partners.
Yeah. I think too, when we talk about, creating environments that encourage meaningful play, I think making sure that you are switching out materials is really important. And making sure that you change two things: bringing in materials that they may have never seen or experienced before, and then also things that are familiar that you would see in your community, that you would see out in your play yard, that you might see in your backyard, so that you have two different things going on. You have that cognitive recognition. I know what this is. We eat tangerines every day from home, right? Or what is this? What is this fruit? A dragon fruit? Never heard of it. Kiwi? Never heard of it, right? So, so I think that when you switch things up, it makes it more exciting too. And sometimes we tend to like kind of have maybe the same materials in your classrooms, and maybe you'll introduce a theme or two to add to it. But I think rotating materials, changing the room, not all the time, but a few times throughout your school year, I think also brings some fresh perspective. We kind of joke about that when we do a room change, and the kids come in on Monday and it's like everything in the room is brand new and it's literally all the same stuff that they had, but we just maybe changed the way we presented it. Is another way to kind of keep things fresh and exciting for everybody,
Yeah,
I would say.
I
Yeah.
I think that presentation is important. How you present the materials can change the way that children play with materials.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to present materials in a very inviting way, that children will want to engage with them. So if
Yeah.
you bring in something and children are not engaging, it's probably having to do not so much with the material, but how you presented it.
Yeah.
So it's just about learning how to present materials in a way that is inviting and exciting so that children will want to engage.
Yeah. What do you think the long-term benefits of having play in an early childhood education setting or development programs? What do you think the long-term benefits are?
The long-term benefits, children feel loved, they feel heard, they feel uh, understood, because through play, children learn all about themselves. They develop self-esteem, positive self-concept, and you know, engaging in play with adults really helps to develop those things, especially if you're doing it in a positive way. And it can also be in a negative way where you develop negative self-concept, negative self-esteem. So regardless, it's going to develop who they are and who they become.
So I'd like to leave folks with a little golden nugget. So what is one tip or strategy that you could give the listeners today that might be an actionable um, thing that they can do to improve a play-based program?
Tip for improvement.
Yeah, I left all the hard questions for you, Susie. Yeah, just maybe if somebody's maybe they're fairly new to the field, maybe they're a 1 years in as being a child director or an education coordinator, or maybe somebody wants to kind of revamp their program and they feel like it's a little stale. What would be one tip that you give folks?
I'm going to go back to the loose parts, just because I'm so passionate about it these days.
Okay.
And if you haven't already introduced those parts into your program, I really suggest that you try you should start at least with one thing, um, and involve the parents in the process. That's what's so beautiful about loose parts, is that you can involve parents in bringing materials into the classroom. So you create belonging for the children because the parents are bringing in items from home that the children will recognize, and the parents feel involved in the program. So I would say it's a great way to involve children, families into your program, into what you do, and have them really understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. And that really is facilitated really well with this loose parts.
Okay. So what would you say was your favorite chapter to write in your book?
Um, so my book is for parents and educators, so it's kind of like both because I consider them both. But I would say my favorite topic right now is STEAM skills. So science, technology, engineering, art, and math. So part of my curriculum in my daycares, we incorporate STEAM skills into everything that we do, because it is a really holistic program in terms of learning. So when you're when you're playing along with something, you're learning different skills in different subject areas. But STEAM learning is much more than just learning a particular subject like science or engineering. It's incorporating all those things into one play scenario. So, I always like to give the example of the architect, right? The architect uses science, uses technology, uses engineering, uses art, uses math in their job. They don't specifically do just one subject. They do all of them all together at the same time. And we do that with children too. And so my chapters on STEAM is really, my passion right now, I would say, in
Yeah.
terms of how it really impacts children, and learning is very holistic.
Yeah. So where can folks get your book?
So it is available on Amazon. You can just search up Learn to Play, or you can search up my name, Susie Beghin. Either way, the book should pop up.
Okay. All right. So, is there anything you want to leave the listeners before we head out?
I really want to just emphasize the part about tapping into your inner child. I think whether you're a childcare director, whether you're a supervisor, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a parent, if you really tap into your inner child, you'll understand children, and you'll be able to interact and create the best program for them, the best learning, the best opportunities for them. Erica, I see you as, really being able to tap into your inner child very often. I see myself that way too. And that's what I leave people with is this is not a serious business, although it can be serious, and it is
Hmm.
serious when we're dealing with vulnerable population. We
Sure.
still do have to remember that children want us to tap into our inner child in our
Yeah.
interactions with them. And that's how we'll have the best kind of interactions with them that are loving, supportive, nurturing, and educational all at the same time.
Yeah. There is a quote, and I'm not going to say it right, but there is a quote that says, something to the fact of that teachers who teach to like, who love teaching, teach children who love to learn or something like that. But
Yes.
I really believe that that is very true. And for those of you who are in a funk at the administrative level and maybe miss being in the classroom because so many of us started in a classroom, you know what? Like Susie says, although what we do, it is a serious business, taking care of people's children in their lives absolutely is serious. However, it doesn't have to be like boring and dull and monotonous, right? You can still have fun. I have to tell you, coloring is therapy, right? If you're stressed out, you're not having a great day, go in a room, laugh with the kids, have some fun. I promise you, it's good for your heart. It's good for your health. It's good for your mind. It's good for your kids. It's good for your teachers. So we'll leave you with that today. If you like today's episode, please hit the subscribe button wherever that is on your TV. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please leave us a review. It just takes a couple minutes. We want to be able to keep giving you wonderful tidbits and bringing amazing folks like Susie onto our show. As always, please remember it's the little details that make a big impact on the success of your childcare business. That's all for now. And as always, have a great day.
Well, all the cute little kiddos have been picked up and it's time to go home. And that'll do it for another episode of the Child Care Director's Chair. Please leave a review so Erica knows the information is helping you to manage and improve your childcare centers. Remember to subscribe to get the latest episode from Erica's Child Care Director's Chair.